Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really getting into a complex web, connecting the entertainment world, organized crime, and political power.
Yeah, and specifically looking at Sean Diddy Combs' early career, the people around him, his mentors.
Exactly. And listeners, you're probably aware of the really serious allegations swirling around Combs right now. Things like sexual assault, trafficking, this phrase, empire of sex crimes.
Which immediately brings Jeffrey Epstein to mind, right? The parallels are, well, hard to miss.
They are. But our goal today isn't really to rehash those specific current allegations. We want to step back.
Look at the foundations. How did his career start? What was the environment like?
Right. Because, as we saw with Epstein, these things often suggest wider networks, bigger systems at play.
So, is Combs part of something larger? That's the underlying question. We'll be exploring his entry into the music industry, the key figures, the corporate structures.
And we absolutely have to credit the incredible investigative work done here, primarily by Whitney Webb.
Definitely. Our discussion relies heavily on that series by CZ Means and Whitney Webb on Unlimited Hangout.
Yes, huge credit to Whitney Webb for digging into this. We're also pulling from a Mob Avex special on MCA and the Mob and some discussions Whitney had on the Katie Halper show about this case.
Okay, so where do we start? His early life.
Yeah, let's start there. Because it seems like his beginnings were already, well, complicated. Far from the Hollywood image.
Right. Born in Harlem, 1969, his mother, Janice, was a teacher, former model.
And his father, Melvin Earl Combs. Air Force vet, but also apparently had connections.
Significant ones, reportedly, associated with Frank Lucas, the heroin kingpin.
Yeah, American gangster Frank Lucas. And later, they say, ties to the Gambino crime family.
So that exposure, even indirectly, it's there from the start. A very different world.
And then the tragedy. Melvin Combs was murdered. Sean was only 3.
And the circumstances are murky, but they're speculation.
Yeah.
Serious speculation.
That he might have been a federal informant. That's what the Unlimited Hangout series suggests, based on sources.
Yeah, apparently working with a Gambino-backed dealer, Willie Abraham. And the theory is a wiretap on Melvin's phone led to arrests.
Which could provide a motive for his murder
Right.
by the Gambinos. It's, wow, that's quite a starting point.
Directly brushing against organized crime right from childhood, basically.
Combs himself has mentioned his father's hustler's mentality. So maybe some awareness was there.
Possibly. And interestingly, even as a kid, Sean was performing that Baskin-Robbins ad when he was 2.
Huh, yeah, I read that. And some modeling. Little glimpses of the future entertainer.
Okay, so moving into his teens, he went to Mount St. Michael Academy, MSMA, in the Bronx.
Right. And this period,
Yeah.
this introduces something really disturbing.
The sex abuse scandal at the school.
Exactly. While he was there, involving faculty, the principal, Brother Timothy Brady, was arrested, jailed for abusing boys.
And there were other allegations, lawsuits. It sounds like a pervasive problem at that time, maybe involving classmates of Combs.
It just raises questions, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the environment he was in during those formative years.
It's a deeply troubling backdrop. We don't know the direct impact on him, of course, but it was happening.
The Unlimited Hangout series also mentioned something about the FBI and the DA possibly using that situation.
Right, against a gay priest, Father Bernard Lynch. Sort of a COINTELPRO style campaign, some argue. A distraction, maybe?
So a really complex and, frankly, dark environment.
And amidst all this, he's getting interested in music. There's that story about being a dancer for Michael Jackson.
Which might be a bit stretched, yeah. But the later connections to Jackson are real.
And significant. Both faced similar, serious allegations, of course.
They also shared connections to certain Zionist power brokers in the industry. And both were close with Ron Burkle.
The billionaire, Epstein associate, frequent flyer on Epstein's jet.
And godfather to Combs' children. These overlaps, they keep popping up. Burkle, Epstein.
It suggests these circles are smaller and more interconnected than you might think.
Then he goes to Howard University in '87. Starts promoting parties.
Right, gets a reputation. But not all positive, apparently. Reports of belligerence, sexual harassment, even domestic violence claims back then.
Early signs, perhaps, of patterns that would emerge later.
But the ambition was there. He gets an internship at Uptown Records in 1990.
Through Heavy D, his neighbor, right? And starts working under Andre Harrell.
Andre Harrell, a key figure. And his own background is pretty interesting in this context.
He was in a rap group, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Worked at WIN's radio.
Okay, and WIN's radio, that's a connection point. Previously owned by J. Elroy McCaw.
Former OSS, National Security Council ties. McCaw hired Alan Freed through Morris Levy.
Morris Levy, Roulette Records, now we're getting into it.
Allegations of heroin trafficking through the label, Genovese crime family links.
Exactly, according to a U.S. assistant attorney, yeah. And Levy backed Sugar Hill Records, the first hip-hop label. So Harrell's early path intersects with these figures. Alleged mob ties, drugs. That's the world Combs is stepping into.
Harrell then goes to Def Jam with Russell Simmons.
And Def Jam's early distribution was through CBS Records, headed by Walter Yetnikoff.
Clive Davis' associate.
Mm-hmm.
Yetnikoff had his own payola scandal issues.
Right. And then CBS gets taken over by Lawrence Tisch in '86.
A founder of the mega group. We'll definitely come back to them.
Yeah.
So Harrell leaves Def Jam, starts Uptown Records.
Also in '86, and Uptown's big break, like Def Jam's, comes from a deal with a major player.
MCA, Music Corporation of America.
Yep. Distribution deal in '87, then a massive $50 million multimedia deal in '92. This MCA connection is crucial.
Because MCA itself had, let's say, a reputation. Deep ties to organized crime, political power.
Oh, absolutely. And Uptown under Harrell, it sounded pretty wild. Even his obituary mentioned him hiring street enforcers.
Drug dealers working at the label. The story about the gun at the MCA conference.
Yeah, it paints a picture of an operation very much tied to the streets, not your typical corporate environment.
And tragically, it's during this Uptown MCA period that we see one of the first known sexual assault allegations against Combs.
After an MCA event, early '90s, it suggests, well, maybe a permissive environment at least.
Nelson George described the Uptown office as this mix of workspace, social, club, temporary housing. Wild parties.
That inspired the film Strictly Business, right, which Harrell executive produced.
Yeah, for Island World Pictures.
Yeah.
And the film itself, about mixing business and relationships. Viewed now, it feels unsettling. Hints of quid pro quos, maybe.
And Harrell apparently introduced Combs to Kim Porter there, too, who was dating Al B at the time. Another layer.
Harrell was also a consultant on New Jack City.
The Warner Brothers film, glorifying drug dealing.
Developed by a company linked to figures like Manny Kimmel, Longy's Woolman, Meyer Lansky Associates, Sam Bronfman Associates, too.
And the title, New Jack City, echoing Harrell's New Jack Swing genre. It's quite a connection. Warner Brothers, mob figures, romanticizing the crack era around '91.
And later, Warner execs tied to Robert Maxwell, another intelligence asset linked to crime and Epstein. The patterns repeat.
So let's talk more about MCA, this powerhouse behind Uptown.
Yeah, both unlimited hangout and mob effects really paint a picture of MCA being deeply intertwined with the mob and politics, especially powerful during the Reagan years.
Very close to the White House. Some even suggest MCA was involved in covert ops, using mob connections, intelligence links.
Lou Wasserman, the guy who built MCA, his ties go way back.
To Moe Dalitz, the Jewish mobster, Lansky associate. Wasserman apparently started as Dalitz's publicist, maybe even connections to Dalitz's gang earlier.
Mary, the daughter of Dalitz's lawyer. These ties were deep.
It shows how figures allegedly tied to the mob could operate at the highest levels of entertainment and politics.
And Wasserman was key to Reagan's career, wasn't he?
Absolutely. MCA represented Reagan since the 40s. Wasserman managed his Screen Actors Guild presidency to MCA's benefit. MCA execs heavily involved in his campaigns.
And then Reagan's Attorney General, Ed Meese, shuts down an investigation to MCA's mob ties.
Right. That investigation, according to MOBFX, found MCA doing business with the Gambinos, specifically hiring Salvatore Pisello.
An FBI-identified Gambino soldier with zero entertainment experience.
And Pisello was partners with Morris Levy, the guy linked to the Genovese family.
But MCA kept dealing with him, even when his mob ties were known.
On Wasserman's and Sidney Sheinberg's orders, apparently, despite internal protests.
And Irving Azoff, involved in those deals, gets promoted to head MCA Music, the division that partners with Uptown.
And years later, Azoff becomes Combs' neighbor, small world. It shows how deep these connections could run inside these corporations.
The MCA probe also found links to the Genovese family,
Yeah.
same family tied to Morris Levy and maybe Leslie Wexner around the time his lawyer was killed, mob style.
Then MCA gets tangled in the Promise software scandal.
Which involves U.S. and Israeli intelligence, organized crime, Iran-Contra figures, complex stuff.
And a top MCA exec, Eugene Gianquinto, was right in the middle of it. He later supposedly took credit for killing the MCA mob investigation.
MCA's internal nickname was the Octopus.
Yeah. Chillingly, that's the same name. Journalist Danny Casolaro was investigating in relation to Promise right before he died. It really underscores the kind of reputation MCA had. Then, mid-90s, MCA gets bought by Seagrams. the Bronfman family.
Another family with a long history of alleged organized crime links back to Prohibition.
Wasserman stays on the board. Edgar Bronfman Jr. brings in Michael Ovitz.
Later Disney president, Epstein associate.
And the Bronfmans eventually get control of Def Jam, too, consolidating power.
And in 91, Charles Bronfman and Leslie Wexner co-found the Mega Group.
Right. Wexner, Epstein's main backer. This group united billionaire families, many with documented mob ties. The Bronfmans, Wexner, the Crowns, Lawrence Tisch.
Tisch, who controlled CBS and had his own Italian mafia links through Michelle Sindona.
Even Steven Spielberg,
Yeah.
Wasserman protege, Mega Group member. He later helps Brett Ratner's career.
Ratner, who's tied to Combs, Harrell, Simmons, and claimed childhood links to Lansky and Al Malnick. It's an incredibly tight network.
So back to Combs at Uptown. Success with Mary J. Blige, Jodeci, but also violence?
The CCNY basketball game stampede in 91. 9 deaths. Combs helped plan it, faced scrutiny over safety.
And it wasn't isolated. He kept throwing these crazy, notoriously raucous parties.
At the Red Zone Club, which itself had links. Maurice Brahms, an associate of Roy Cohn.
Roy Cohn, lawyer to the Genovese and Gambino families. It all connects.
Reports said the violence at Combs' daddy's house parties got so bad the club lost its liquor license. A pattern of chaos.
And much, much more disturbingly, the allegations of sexual violence escalate during this time.
Liza Gardner's lawsuit, alleging rape by Combs and Aaron Hall after an MCA event in 90 or 91. She was a minor.
And the suit names MCA and Geffen as co-defendants, suggesting corporate awareness or liability.
Another woman claimed Devontae Swing of Jodici watched Gardner's alleged rape by Combs at a place possibly subsidized by Uptown. Swing's also a defendant now.
Just horrific allegations. And then Joy Dickerson-Neal's lawsuit.
Alleging Combs drugged and raped her in 91, likely at an Uptown MCA studio.
And her suit claims Combs filmed it, shared the footage with Uptown employees.
This early element of non-consensual recording, it seems significant given later accusations.
A potential pattern, yes. Extremely disturbing.
So 1993, Harrell fires Combs from Uptown. Too cocky, supposedly.
But they stayed connected. Harrell's godfather to Combs' son.
And Combs immediately starts Bad Boy Records that same year. Lands a huge deal.
$15 million distribution deal with Arista Records. Clive Davis's label.
Clive Davis, another major mentor, and his background. Well, it fits the pattern we're seeing.
Absolutely. Davis started at Rosamond and Collin LLP. Their clients, CBS, yes, but also offshore banks owned by Bruce Rappaport.
Rappaport had ties to the CIA, Israeli intelligence, mob boss Semyon Mogilevich.
Davis then moves to CBS Columbia under William Paley. Paley had Rockefeller connections. So Davis is operating in these powerful, interconnected circles early on.
His time as CBS Records president. Famous for shifting to rock, but also plagued by scandal.
Project Sound, allegations that CBS bribed black radio stations, not just with cash, but possibly drugs, sex.
And dealings with figures tied to a heroin ring. Genovese family again.
That's what the investigation uncovered, yes. And Davis's aide, David Winshaw, was reportedly key in enabling this.
Davis got fired from CBS. Officially for skimming money, right? Personal enrichment?
Yes, but some suggest it was really to head off the bigger Drugula scandal blowing up, to contain the damage.
But he wasn't out for long. Consultant for Bell Records.
Which quickly becomes Arista Records, with backing from Alan Hirschfield at Allen & Company.
Allen & Co. Another nexus point. Ties to intelligence figures, Lansky associates involved in financing parts of the Promise scandal.
And Hirschfield knew Alan Tesler, a lawyer for mob figures, also connected to Promise people, and Leslie Wexner. It's the same constellation of names again and again.
The network around Davis seems to overlap significantly with Epstein's network, doesn't it?
It does. Davis was close with Lawrence Tisch's family, Tisch, the Mega Group founder. Jonathan Tisch became a close friend.
Davis donated millions to the Tisch School of the Arts at NYU.
And the Drugula scandal that got Davis fired from CBS, specific links there to the Genovese family.
Which also connects back to MCA, Morris Lavey, Roy Cohn, Wexner. It's a loop.
And now some really disturbing allegations about how Davis, Harrell, and Russell Simmons might have operated.
Siege Knight and Combs' former bodyguard, Gene Deal, they've claimed, that they used drugs and alcohol to compromise Combs.
Yeah, essentially suggesting they initiated him into some kind of exploitative behavior pattern. It echoes the alleged tactics in the Drugula scandal targeting black radio stations.
And Davis's protege, L.A. Reid, has faced misconduct allegations too.
Around 92 is when Combs reportedly starts recording everything obsessively, for blackmail, allegedly.
His Bad Boy co-founder, Kirk Burroughs, sued him, alleging sexual harassment coercion.
And Suge Knight flat out claimed Combs performed sexual acts with Davis, implying exploitation. Davis did later come out as bisexual.
It paints a really dark picture of the power dynamics.
And Russell Simmons, another mentor,
who's faced a barrage of rape and harassment allegations since 2017, now avoiding charges in Bali.
Simmons was very close with Brett Ratner. They've been accused of joint sex crimes.
Ratner, the director, also facing numerous accusations, fled to Israel for a bit, hanging out with Trump and Musk recently.
And Ratner has deep ties to Al Melnick,
Alleged heir to Meyer Lansky, credited with developing mob money laundering techniques. Ratner even claimed he knew Lansky personally as a kid.
And the Simmons-Ratner-Melnick network also connects back to Michael Jackson and Ron Burkle, Epstein's associate again.
It's dizzying, which leads to this final, really explosive idea.
The possibility of a deliberate conspiracy to push crime in hip-hop for profit.
The idea being that by the 90s, the mega group billionaires controlled so much of the music industry. MCA, CBS, Def Jam, Warner.
And this anonymous insider account of a secret meeting in '91.
Where label execs were supposedly told, promote crime and rap music. Why? To feed the private prison industry. Make it profitable.
It sounds wild, but scholars like Portia Maltzby and many rappers have talked about the industry's links to private prisons. They felt that pressure.
And the political connections fit, potentially. The Wasserman and MCA backed Bill Clinton heavily. The Wasserman Foundation gave big to the Clinton Foundation.
Then Clinton signs the '94 crime bill, which leads to mass incarceration, hitting black communities hardest.
And who benefits? Private prison companies. CCA, Geo Group, which used to be Wackenhut Corrections.
Wackenhut.
Yeah.
And they had deep ties to MCA back in the '80s, that joint venture on the Cabazon Reservation, the Promise scandal connection.
Ex-CIA deputy directors on Wackenhut's board. Reagan's future CIA director, William Casey, was their lawyer.
Wackenhut was reportedly used as a CIA front sometimes, linked to Iran-Contra figures.
And some of those same CIA Wackenhut figures were involved with Wexner and Epstein trying to move that Iran-Contra airline, Southern Air Transport, to Ohio, possibly for arms trafficking.
It's a tangled web. At the same time, you have Gary Webb's Dark Alliance series alleging CIA-backed Contras flooding black communities with crack cocaine in the '90s.
So the theory goes, gangster rap, promoted by labels like Death Row,
which had alleged intel ties through Michael Harry O'Harris, an associate of Freeway Ricky Ross.
And Bad Boy Records becomes the dominant sound, glorifying drugs, crime, pushing out conscious hip-hop.
Potentially coercing artists like Dr. Dre, Tupac maybe, and films like New Jack City from Harold Warner romanticizing it all. Cultural engineering, essentially.
For whose benefit? MCA, Universal, CIA-linked Wackenhut profiting hugely from mass incarceration. Other corporations using prison labor, including companies tied to the mega-group billionaires.
It suggests a potential convergence of interests, promoting a certain culture that had devastating real-world consequences, while certain powerful groups profited immensely.
So wrapping this up, Sean Combs' early career put him right in the orbit of people and companies with deep documented ties to organized crime.
From his father's alleged links to mentors like Andre Harrell and Clive Davis, whose own careers were tangled with the mob, maybe even intelligence agencies.
And the evidence points towards a really disturbing possibility. A deliberate push by powerful figures, entertainment, crime, maybe intel to promote crime and violence in hip-hop.
Potentially to benefit the private prison boom. Right. And figures connected to Combs are right there in that picture.
It really forces you to think about Combs' alleged actions not just in isolation, but as potentially part of this much larger, darker system.
Was he a product of it, a tool within it? Both.
It leaves us with a heavy question for our listeners to consider.
What's the lasting impact of all these alleged connections? On music, on culture, particularly the African-American community? How does it help us understand crime, incarceration, influence today?
We really encourage everyone listening to dig deeper, think critically about these relationships.
And definitely check out Whitney Webb's work. Her research has been absolutely crucial in uncovering so much of this.